Minnesota Vikings at the Detroit Lions. Lions favored by 3.5 here. Nick Mullen's back for the Vikings getting the start. Are the Lions still technically in play for number 2, or are they locked into 3 here, seeding-wise?
I think either way, Detroit is motivated in this game, given what happened last week. And I think that actually gives the Lions a rare opportunity to create that galvanized siege mentality thing that actually has an impact going into the postseason. I mean, Detroit may have been motivated anyway, but this is a different type of motivation. The NFL, not only did they screw them out of that Dallas game, now look, they also screwed Dallas like a drive before, so that part is kind of irrelevant. But from Detroit's perspective, they got screwed out of that game, which screwed them out of playoff seeding, and everything that's happened subsequently, the NFL has basically just flip the bird to Detroit and said, "You're liars. There's nothing you can do about it. We're not gonna fix it. In fact, we're gonna make it seem like it was your fault. We're gonna blame you for it all, and we're gonna make like TV shows out of it. There's a mic'd up segment that shows all this thing. We're gonna essentially mock you about the whole thing." If I was part of the Lions setup, I would be furious about how everything is played out about that game. And I think they can actually channel that into some kind of postseason, motivation. And legitimately, it sounds ridiculous, but those siege mentality things, if you're able to actually create them, they work. Like, there is a reason that NFL coaches or coaches everywhere, forget NFL, all sports, keep trying to tap into that stuff because players are slightly unhinged, and if you're able to convince them that the world is out to screw them, it makes them play harder. So I think that whole week, that whole disaster with the officiating is actually going to get a pissed off Detroit Lions team, not just playing hard in this game, but playing hard in this game on their way into the playoffs.
I don't understand how bulletin board material type stuff actually does work. But I do know they're all looking for it.
Yep.
They're all looking for it.
And maybe it only works beyond a certain level. Like, some guy says something about your team. That's pretty hard to register these days. But the NFL officials actively screwing you out of a game and then effectively blaming you for it, which is what's happened here, I think that's pretty easy to rally behind.
Yeah. I mean, it was like the 2005 Worcester Tornadoes.
Of course.
We were, I mentioned playing the Quebec Capitales.
You did.
We played them in the finals. They kept trading for the best players around the league.
Yeah.
We kept the same squad together.
And that really motivated
you?
We
rallied around our team. We made 4 transactions all year. That was it. And they were all deserved.
So it was you against the big spenders.
It was us against the big spenders. We rallied.
Just an underdog story.
As a squad. So I can relate.
Of course.
To these NFL underdogs heading into the playoffs. I think the Lions should start the game with like a 9 offensive lineman formation. With 4 eligibles.
Every single play, they should send 3 tackles. They should do exactly the same thing as they did in this game, every play, and effectively quiz the ref about which one reported as eligible.
That would be great. Really, that'd be a great response. I wonder if they would do that.
Troll them actively.
Dan Campbell was on Detroit radio this week. He is great. He is as I feel like we anticipated a bit of crazy and intense with him initially, but in the wrong ways, right? We thought it would be like he's going to like
classic meathead idiot.
Right. We thought he was going to like run the ball, 38 straight times.
Once he gave the kneecap biting speech, that's like what everybody defaulted to, right? Classic dinosaur.
He's going to punt, play defense, but it's not. It's like the radio host was like it was like a low percentage decision to go for 2 from the 7. He goes, "Tell me what you really believe." He's like, "I think it was a stupid decision." He's like asking for these answers. He's aggressive, and I wonder if he's going to handle this one aggressively. The other aspect of this, again, there's the storylines this week. I think are which teams are resting, which teams are playing, and it is a fascinating decision every week. Keeping guys sharp, getting reps, versus being healthy. And again, we'll talk about the Rams later, but the Rams could go from between the 6 and the 7 seed. They could dictate if they go to Detroit. Right now they're locked in to go to Detroit, but they could have to go to Dallas where they got waxed, the Rams. And they're deciding health is the most important thing. The Lions last year in Week 18 had nothing to play for because Seattle won in their game. Detroit knew they had nothing to play for except play spoiler against the Packers, and they played it like it was a playoff game. Now the Lions know they have nothing to play for as far as seeding goes. And is that just the Dan Campbell mentality? We're going to play it like it's a real game.
Well, I also think a lot of times, one of the reasons you might play starters is if you are riding, like you don't want to lose the momentum, whatever that's worth, or if it even exists, right, during the course of the season. So if you're a team that's hot right now, heading into the playoffs, but with this 1 week to go before you make it, I think there are some coaches there that don't want to risk losing that by resting everybody and maybe screwing up a game or simply just having a week off for those starters and those guys going off the boil. Again, because of what we just talked about, like the Lions are now in this zone where they are pissed off and they want to do something about it. The first thing up to do about it is this game. So I don't think that they will risk losing that, like not capitalizing on that potential boost of the siege mentality and the league against us and all that kind of stuff by throwing out backups, losing a game or just simply not capturing that intensity. I think they want to make a point. They want to win this game easily, rest everybody in the fourth quarter or whatever, and then do it again next week.
Lions favored by 3.5 here. Vikings are putting Nick Mullins back in, who, again, what we've seen from him is the ability to move the ball, get the ball to their good group of playmakers, and then turn it over a bunch. Which is the best Vikings quarterback play we've seen over the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, it is. And that's the bottom line, I guess. It might be my favorite description that Chris has ever had of anybody during that broadcast where he was talking about Nick Mullins. And he's like, I love watching Nick Mullins play. He'll move the ball, blah, blah. He's crazy, but he'll at least put some yards up. You're like, that's perfect. That's exactly what he is. He is nuts. Like he will put passes in the air that are ridiculous. But he will move the ball between doing that, which you can't say about Jaron Hall and you can't say about Josh Dobbs necessarily. So, to me, the decision would be between Dobbs or Mullins. And I guess if you're Kevin O'Connell, you think there's a higher chance that the guy that moves the ball can maybe not turn it over a bunch of times than there is of the guy who won't turn it over that much moving the ball when he's struggling.
The interesting thing when I'm watching quarterbacks without what I would say is below average NFL arm strength. Average is this relative term. I've said this before, like in baseball, they said in the scouting scale, your average fastball back when I was playing was like 90, 91 miles an hour. But like 85% of pitchers threw above that. So it's like average doesn't mean the average of every pitcher. It's just like this is what we consider average at the major league level, right? Like serviceable average, I guess. I feel like NFL arm strength is like that. 28 out of 32 starting quarterbacks at any given time are above average NFL arm strength. But every now and again, you have a below average arm. Like that's Mullins, right? Below average arm. That's what Kellen Moore had. And you have to.
Well, Mullins kind of feels like what would happen if Brett Favre had no arm. Like Brett Favre, who's defining.
Jake Browning has a below average arm, but when you have to play with above average
anticipation
and accuracy.
He's like a classic gunslinger, except he doesn't have the gun to sling. He's just out here throwing the ball into ridiculous windows that can't possibly be complete because you don't have the arm to get it there.
And maybe average is the wrong word, but let's say like NFL baseline arm. Most NFL quarterbacks have the NFL baseline arm, whatever that is. And every now and again, you have guys that are below that, and they're fascinating to watch because Mullins was throwing passes like, how did it get there a couple times? And then other times, well, it doesn't get there, So it's like that's what makes it look crazy when it's Nick Mullins. Sees the same window as everyone else, but doesn't have the juice to get it there.
Yeah.
So where are you going? Detroit favored by 3.5.
Oh, Lions all day, baby.
Yeah, I'll take the Lions.
I'm riding that mystique. Dan Campbell siege mentality.